Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where we dive deep into the most mind-bending and extraordinary phenomena our world has to offer. Let us get straight into it. Imagine descending into the freezing, abyssal depths of the Arctic and North Atlantic Oceans. Down here, in a world of crushing pressure and absolute pitch-black darkness, a silent leviathan drifts through the water. Moving at a sluggish pace of less than 1 mile per hour, this creature might seem unremarkable at first glance. It is a mottled, gray, barrel-shaped scavenger, endlessly roaming the seafloor. Yet, hidden within its biology is one of the most astonishing secrets of the natural world. If you were to encounter a fully grown female today, there is a distinct biological possibility that she was born around the time William Shakespeare was drafting the play Hamlet, or when Galileo Galilei first pointed his telescope at the night sky to observe the cosmos. You are looking at the Greenland shark, known scientifically as Somniosus microcephalus. This is a deep-sea predator and the longest living vertebrate known to science. With a lifespan conservatively estimated at 272 years and potentially exceeding 500 years, this enigmatic Elasmobranch has completely shattered our understanding of aging, senescence, and the biological limits of vertebrate life. For decades, the Greenland shark was an elusive ghost of the polar seas. It was a species categorized simply as data deficient, largely ignored by mainstream marine biology because it was so incredibly difficult to study. Today, however, it stands at the absolute forefront of genetic and physiological research. By studying the extreme longevity of the Greenland shark, scientists are actively decoding the mechanisms of what is known as negligible senescence. This is the fascinating phenomenon where an organism shows virtually no signs of biological aging over time. To truly understand how the Greenland shark defies the march of time, we first have to understand its extreme lifestyle and its anatomy. Belonging to the family Somniosidae, which are commonly known as sleeper sharks, the Greenland shark is a colossal fish. Adult sharks routinely reach massive lengths of 4 to 5 meters, which is about 13 to 16 feet. The largest confirmed specimens stretch over 6 meters, or 21 feet, and weigh more than 1,000 kilograms, which is well over 2,200 pounds. Despite their massive size and bulk, these sharks live life in the absolute slow lane. They inhabit icy waters ranging from just below freezing at -1.1 degrees Celsius up to about 7.4 degrees Celsius, plunging to ocean depths exceeding 1,800 meters, or 5,900 feet. Because their environment is characterized by this extreme crushing pressure and total darkness, their metabolism and physical movements have beautifully adapted to conserve as much energy as possible. In fact, they exhibit the lowest swim speed and tail beat frequency for their size of any fish species on Earth, cruising at a mere 0.34 meters per second. Their physical appearance perfectly reflects their ancient deep-sea existence. They possess huge cylindrical bodies covered in highly specialized dermal denticles. These are essentially tooth-like scales that reduce hydrodynamic drag, allowing them to glide almost completely silently through the water column. However, one of their most striking features is actually a rather gruesome parasitic affliction. The eyes of the vast majority of adult Greenland sharks harbor a bioluminescent copepod crustacean called Omatocoita elongata. This parasite physically attaches itself to the shark's cornea. Over time, it eventually renders the shark partially or completely blind. Yet, in the pitch-black depths of the Arctic Ocean, sight is merely a secondary sense. The shark does not need its eyes. Instead, it relies heavily on an incredibly acute sense of smell to navigate the dark waters and locate its prey. And speaking of prey, as apex predators and opportunistic scavengers, Greenland sharks boast a highly varied and surprising diet. Despite their incredibly sluggish cruising speeds, their stomachs have yielded the remains of remarkably fast-moving prey. Researchers have found the remains of seals, fast fish like cod and halibut, agile squid, and even the occasional remains of terrestrial animals like reindeer, moose, and polar bears. You might be wondering how a fish moving at less than 1 mile per hour catches a seal. Well, scientists theorize that these sharks may ambush seals while the mammals are sleeping in the dark water. The shark utilizes a highly specialized buccal cavity inside its mouth to generate an immense, sudden vacuum of suction. This allows them to pull prey directly into their powerful jaws without ever needing to engage in a high-speed chase. But let us move on to the greatest mystery of this creature. For a very long time, the true age of the Greenland shark was a completely unsolved puzzle. In typical fisheries science, the age of most teleost or bony fish is determined by examining their otoliths. These are tiny ear bones that accumulate annual calcified growth rings, functioning very much like the rings of a tree. However, Elasmobranchs, which encompass sharks, rays, and skates, possess cartilaginous skeletons and completely lack otoliths. For some other shark species, like the great white or the porbeagle, marine biologists can sometimes count growth bands in the calcified cartilage of their vertebrae or their dorsal fin spines. The Greenland shark, however, possesses incredibly soft, uncalcified vertebrae that yield absolutely no such clues. For decades, the only indicator of their potential longevity was their incredibly slow growth rate. Tagging and recapture studies originating from the mid-20th century revealed that these giants grow at a microscopic rate of just 0.5 to 1 centimeter per year. If a shark measures 5 meters long and grows less than a centimeter annually, the mathematical implications are simply staggering. It pointed to an unbelievably long life, but scientists needed hard proof. The definitive breakthrough finally arrived in August of 2016 when a brilliant team of researchers, led by marine biologist Julius Nielsen, published a landmark study in the highly prestigious journal Science. Unable to rely on bones or cartilage, the team turned to a completely unlikely biological archive. They looked at the shark's eye. In vertebrates, the nucleus of the eye lens is composed of metabolically inert crystalline proteins. The very center of this lens, known as the embryonic nucleus, is actually formed during prenatal development when the animal is still in the womb or egg, and it remains completely unchanged for the rest of the animal's life. By carefully isolating this specific tissue, researchers can extract proteins that were synthesized at the exact moment the shark was born. To date these ancient proteins, the team utilized advanced radiocarbon dating techniques. Specifically, they were searching for something called the bomb pulse. Back in the mid-20th century, atmospheric thermonuclear weapons testing caused a massive, global spike in carbon-14 isotopes in our atmosphere. This bomb pulse permeated the marine food web by the early 1960s, creating a permanent radioactive timestamp in the tissues of living organisms across the globe. When Nielsen's team tested the eye lenses of 28 female Greenland sharks that had unfortunately been caught as fisheries bycatch, the results were nothing short of historic. Only the two smallest sharks, which measured 220 centimeters or less, showed any traces of the radioactive bomb pulse. This indicated that only those two were born after the 1960s. The other 26 sharks were completely devoid of the bomb pulse, placing their birth dates firmly and undisputedly before the atomic age. Through complex Bayesian mathematical modeling and rigorous radiocarbon calibration, the team deduced the ages of the largest specimens. The largest shark in the study, a massive 5.02-meter female, was estimated to be 392, plus or minus 120 years old. This means she was at least 272 years old, but potentially up to 512 years old. This unbelievable discovery instantly crowned the Greenland shark as the undisputed longest-living vertebrate known to humanity, vastly outliving the previous record holder, which was the 211-year-old bowhead whale. Perhaps even more astonishing than their maximum age was the discovery regarding their reproductive timeline. The radiocarbon data revealed that female Greenland sharks do not reach sexual maturity until they are roughly 4 meters long. In terms of biological time, this means a female Greenland shark must survive in the harsh ocean for at least 156, plus or minus 22 years, before she is even capable of reproducing. She literally experiences a century and a half of childhood and adolescence before she can contribute a single offspring to the population. This mind-blowing discovery of their extreme age triggered a massive new wave of scientific inquiry across the globe. Aging, or senescence, is considered a biological inevitability for almost all life forms on Earth. It is characterized by the gradual deterioration of physiological function, genomic instability, the shortening of telomeres, mitochondrial dysfunction, and the steady accumulation of cellular damage over time. Yet the Greenland shark seems to effortlessly glide through the centuries with virtually no functional decline. exhibiting what gerontologists call negligible senescence. So the ultimate question is, how exactly do they do it? Initially, scientists hypothesized that the shark's extreme longevity was simply a byproduct of its frigid, deep-sea environment. Living in the freezing waters of the Arctic functions much like a biological refrigerator, significantly slowing down metabolic processes, reducing the rate of cellular turnover, and decreasing the dangerous generation of harmful free radicals. However, recent studies indicate the reality is far more complex than just being cold. In 2024, researchers from the University of Manchester and several other institutions sought to determine if the Greenland shark's metabolism actually declines with age, exactly as it does in humans and almost all other animals. They carefully measured the metabolic activity of specific enzymes in preserved muscle tissues across a wide range of different shark ages. Astoundingly, they found absolutely no significant variation in muscle metabolic activity between young, middle-aged, and ancient sharks. Their metabolism remains practically perfectly unaltered over centuries of life. Furthermore, studies on the cardiac health of these deep-sea animals have suggested their hearts are finely tuned to function optimally for hundreds of years, without ever succumbing to the cardiovascular degradation that we typically see in aging humans. The Greenland shark's bodily fluids also hold another massive piece of the longevity puzzle. Because they are elasmobranchs, they retain high levels of urea in their tissues to maintain osmotic balance with the dense saltwater environment around them. However, high levels of urea can be highly destabilizing and toxic to cellular proteins. To completely counteract this, the shark's tissues are saturated with exceptionally high concentrations of a compound called trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO for short. TMAO acts as a universal protein stabilizer. It prevents the shark's cells from degrading under the extreme deep-sea pressure and brilliantly counteracts the toxic effects of the urea. Furthermore, the blood of Greenland sharks contains 3 major types of highly specialized hemoglobin. These unique hemoglobin structures possess oxygenation and carbonylation properties that remain completely unaffected by the massive presence of urea in the blood, ensuring highly efficient oxygen transport to their tissues regardless of the freezing environmental temperature or the crushing depths. While a slow metabolism and specialized proteins absolutely contribute to a long life, living for 400 years requires a truly flawless system of genetic maintenance. Every single day, the DNA within a living organism is subjected to microscopic damage from internal metabolic sources and external environmental factors. Over time, the failure to repair this broken DNA leads to mutations, the development of cancer, and the widespread physiological breakdown that we visually recognize as aging. In 2025, a major breakthrough occurred when researchers from the University of Tokyo, alongside other international institutions, successfully mapped the first high-fidelity genome of the Greenland shark. They finally uncovered the molecular secrets behind its incredible longevity, and what they found fundamentally altered our entire understanding of cancer resistance and DNA repair. The genomic sequencing revealed that the Greenland shark possesses an unusually high number of genes that specifically regulate the nitrogen monofluoride kappa-MAGD B signaling pathway. In humans and other vertebrates, the nitrogen monofluoride kappa B pathway is a critical biological regulator of immune responses, cellular inflammation, cell proliferation, and apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. Overactive or dysregulated NF-kappa B signaling in humans is strongly linked to chronic inflammation, autoimmune diseases, and the aggressive spread of various cancers. The Greenland shark, however, has evolved redundant copies of vital regulatory genes such as TNF, TLR, and LRRFIP that flawlessly manage this inflammatory pathway. By keeping cellular inflammation in a constant, perfectly regulated state, the shark completely avoids the chronic inflammaging that slowly destroys mammalian tissues over decades. Another shocking revelation came from looking at the size of their genetic code. The sheer size of the Greenland shark's genome, which spans over 6 billion base pairs, is largely due to the massive presence of retrotransposons, which are commonly known as jumping genes. These are essentially segments of DNA capable of cutting themselves out and inserting themselves elsewhere in the genome. In humans, a high rate of transposon activity is generally considered very dangerous, as it is linked to genomic instability and the rapid onset of cancer. Remarkably, the Greenland shark has turned this potential biological liability into an incredible weapon for survival. Over 70% of the Greenland shark's entire genome consists of these jumping transposons. Researchers deeply suspect that throughout the species' long evolutionary history, the persistent, chaotic activity of these jumping genes forced the shark to evolve hyper-efficient DNA repair mechanisms just to survive. To overcome the genetic messiness of its own massive genome, the shark developed an extraordinary, unparalleled capacity to fix broken DNA strands. The sequencing showed massive significant expansions and alterations in tumor-suppressing genes, most notably the TP53 gene, which is the critical master regulator of the DNA damage response in animals. The Greenland shark essentially possesses an ultra-responsive, highly redundant genetic repair shop built into its cells that catches and instantly fixes cellular errors before they can ever metastasize into cancer or result in cellular senescence. Thus, a 400-year-old shark has tissues that, genetically speaking, are as youthful and pristine as those of a newborn pup. However, this astonishing evolutionary strategy of extreme longevity, paired with a severely delayed age of sexual maturity, works perfectly in an undisturbed, deep-sea ecosystem. But in the Anthropocene, the era of human environmental impact, this exact same biological strategy has made the species critically vulnerable to human interference. The math of their population survival is incredibly delicate. If a female requires 150 years just to reach breeding age, and then carries her pups in a massive gestation period that is estimated to last anywhere from 8 to an unbelievable 18 years, the loss of even a few reproducing adults can easily send entire regional populations into a catastrophic decline. Historically, humans were the apex predator of the Greenland shark. Between the 13th and mid-20th centuries, these gentle giants were aggressively hunted for their massive, oil-rich livers. These huge livers were boiled down to produce lamp oil, industrial machine lubricants, and later, potent vitamin A supplements. While commercial targeted fishing largely collapsed in the 1960s with the advent of cheap synthetic alternatives, the dark legacy of that intense exploitation still heavily lingers. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, estimates that the global population of Greenland sharks may have tragically declined by up to 49% over the past 450 years. To put that into perspective, 450 years translates to just 3 generations for this incredibly slow-growing species. Today, the primary, ongoing threat to the Greenland shark is incidental bycatch. As massive commercial fishing fleets push further north and deeper into the ocean due to melting sea ice and changing climates, interactions with these ancient, slow-moving creatures have dramatically increased. It is estimated that approximately 3,500 Greenland sharks are unintentionally killed every single year, ensnared in bottom trawls, deep long lines, and gill nets targeting lucrative halibut and other deep-water fish in the Arctic and North Atlantic. Recognizing the dire need to protect a species that fundamentally cannot rapidly replace its numbers, global conservation organizations have recently taken unprecedented and necessary steps. In 2020, the IUCN officially worsened the shark's conservation status from near threatened to vulnerable. Following this alarm, in 2022, the Northwest Atlantic Fisheries Organization, an intergovernmental body managing fisheries science, enacted a historic, binding prohibition on the retention of Greenland sharks caught in international waters. While these regulatory measures are absolutely vital for the species' future, the immense lifespan and slow reproduction of the shark means it will take centuries for scientists to observe any genuine population recovery. Despite their deep and highly remote habitat, Greenland sharks have actually left a very distinct mark on the human cultures that border the icy waters of the north. In Iceland, the meat of the Greenland shark is actively consumed, but not without an incredibly intense and necessary preparation process. Because the shark's flesh is so heavily laden with high concentrations of urea and TMAO, consuming the meat raw is highly toxic to humans and dogs alike. Eating it raw induces a severe state known locally as shark drunk, causing severe neurological symptoms, intense intoxication, and in extreme cases, even death. To render this toxic meat edible, resourceful Icelanders have utilized a traditional method dating all the way back to the fearsome Vikings. The shark meat is first cut into large chunks and buried deeply underground under heavy stones for several weeks. This intense pressure physically presses out the toxic fluids from the flesh. After this, the meat is dug up and hung to ferment and dry in the frigid open air for several months. The resulting culinary delicacy, known as kestur hakarl, possesses a potent, eye-watering ammonia-rich odor and a notoriously challenging flavor profile that tourists often struggle to stomach. Nevertheless, it remains a proud staple of Icelandic cultural heritage and is widely celebrated during their traditional midwinter festival. In native Inuit mythology, the toxic and deeply potent nature of the shark's flesh was famously explained through folklore. The Inuit tell the fascinating legend of Skalag, the very first Greenland shark. According to the myth, the massive creature was born when an old woman washed her urine-soaked hair with a piece of cloth and threw that cloth into the dark ocean, perfectly explaining the strong, overpowering scent of ammonia that forever accompanies the beast in the deep waters. Ultimately, the Greenland shark stands as a living, breathing biological paradox. It is a massive, apex predator that moves its entire life in slow motion. It is a highly toxic, partially blind scavenger that effortlessly navigates the pitch-black abyss with grace. And most profoundly, it is a creature that has effectively paused the biological clock, quietly watching the centuries slip by from the freezing, unseen depths of our oceans. As modern science continues to rigorously sequence its complex genome, intimately study its unfaltering deep-sea metabolism, and unravel the mysteries of its cancer-resistant DNA, the Greenland shark transitions from being merely a bizarre ecological curiosity to a vastly vital key in the global study of gerontology and human medicine. By deeply understanding how Somniosus microcephalus continuously repairs its own DNA and entirely prevents cellular senescence, humanity may one day unlock revolutionary new therapies for fighting human cancer, mitigating age-related diseases, and significantly extending the human health span. Yet, as we look to the Greenland shark for the ultimate secrets to longevity and health, we must absolutely ensure its continued survival in the wild. These ancient silent leviathans, some of which have been swimming quietly through the dark waters since long before the Industrial Revolution even began, remind us of the profound, unhurried, and majestic rhythms of the natural world. Protecting them means protecting a living, breathing archive of Earth's history. It means saving a creature that embodies the ultimate biological triumph of endurance over the relentless march of time. Thank you for tuning in to this extensive deep dive on Fun Facts Online. If you enjoyed discovering the secrets of the world's longest living vertebrate, keep exploring, keep questioning, and join us next time as we uncover more incredible facts about the world we share.